Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And today we are getting into the world of photography and 3D imagery. If that isn't vague enough, let's just dive right into it, where scientists have discovered new images on cave painted walls using a unique, special 3D imaging. And this sounds really fancy and full of a lot of chalk new technology, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. However, the techniques we're using date all the way back to the 1800s, so almost 200 years ago. And the art that we are looking at dates back to about 40,000 years. So
Oh,
we're taking
casual
some
40K.
very, yeah, we're taking some very old art and some very old technology, except now we have refined the technology enough to make it feasible for research purposes, which is a really fun journey.
The technology in question is a technique called stereoscopic photography. And what they do with stereoscopic photography is they take two images side by side to allow the brain to process the image in three dimension. An early attempt at 3D imagery, except in the case of the cave paintings, what they've done is they've gone a step further. They measured the distance between the average eye, which is what, 2.5 inches or about
Yeah,
63 centimeters, and they've layered the images next to each other that it actually shows the 3D image on the cave wall. And this actually allowed them to discover new animals within the imagery.
yeah. It allowed you to discover new animals. It also allows you to take into account the contour of the cave walls here. These walls are not flat canvases. And so when they were being painted for the purpose of being viewed with human eyes. Human eyes do this weird thing, being slightly offset from one another. We are not cyclopean.
Hey, speak for
And
yourself.
so,
Layla would like
yeah,
to.
yeah. Uh, and you're a bender at best, and you know it.
Yeah, I'm proud of it.
Yeah. Anyway, it allows us to, when we are taking these pictures for research purposes, allow us to actually see the wall impacting the image, as a lot of this art does incorporate the shape of the wall it's on. It's.
Ooh, okay. So I think this is a good point for us to build up our art history and art theory, because
Yeah,
the canvas is. I,
irregular.
I say this in a completely abstract way, but the canvas is a living object, right? It's
Yeah,
something that can be changed and morphs and adjusts depending on your reference point and where you stand. So the way in which you view the images changes depending on where you're standing as well. And this is something that scientists and researchers have been going over for years, both in terms of the digital world of trying to figure out cameras, photography, videography, but it goes even further back, where it's theorized in the archaeology world that some of the earliest cave paintings, i.e., the ones in Lascaux, which are not that far from these Spanish caves,
yeah,
were determined to have been painted and made with candle flickers, specifically creating an early proto animation where the flickering of the candlelight causes the animals to actually move and to gallop and to, run along the wall.
yeah,
Just it's
yeah,
very interesting how this is kind of an extension of that. This is showing that the human viewpoint changes the way in which the image is shown on the cave itself.
yeah. And more to that too, in this cave in question, which is known as La Pasiega, um, the use of this sort of stereoscopic viewpoint to sort of change the angles and how we look at things has actually revealed three new animals that were previously unrecorded, just due to the nature of the photographs we had, because cave rock art is very fragile, and that is why a lot of direct tourism and direct study is not allowed. It's a 40,000-year-old object. People should not be touching it.
Well, and a lot of the caves suffer from human breath. The CO2 we give out when
Yeah,
we breathe can cause it. The humidity in our
yeah,
breath.
yeah. There's no ventilation in there,
Yeah, there's a lot
but
of damages that humans can cause to these caves, which is why there's a whole ethical debate about showing them. But this does actually show, and I think April Noel at the bottom, who commented on the article via email to Nature and Life Science, is the fact that these authors show us how technical and how skilled the original artists were. We think 40,000 years ago, and we think about how far that was and how different we are from those people. However, humans will still be humaning, where people get caught up in the grand builds and these grand designs, when in hindsight, and I fully subscribe to this mental thought of humans are just going to be humans. We are going to draw things, we are going to make things, and we are going to build things. There may not always be a rhyme or reason or a purpose or some overarching whole. When we are bored, we just start designing and making things.
it's not just boredom either. It's we do create art for just about any reason. A lot of times we don't need a reason.
Well, that's what
One,
I mean. My
yeah, one of
implication
the
of boredom is the lack of true reasoning.
yeah, sure, sure, man. One of the one of the fun things though with this new method is, um, not only giving us more true to life images, giving us images with with the equivalent of a human eye, creating the 3D imaging, but with the animals that the new animals discovered, one of them is something that I'm very excited about. Is one of the new animals was what is known as an auroch, which is a early species of cattle, of wild cow,
Oh.
that no longer exists. And so this is one of the few depictions we will ever have of what these creatures were.
At
And
least
that
from a
was
human's perspective.
from a human's perspective or any perspective. We have this and maybe a handful of fossils if we're lucky.
Jeez, so
So
ultra exclusive.
So, yeah, that's part of that. That's what got me very excited about this article in the first place was you know, out of all these 700 images, one of the new ones that only this methodology revealed was the auroch, which is a very a very big find.
And I think one of the big reasons that I wanted to talk about this article specifically is the fact that every single day we are discovering a new technique or a new methodology to further add to our knowledge of these topics, another way to study. And the thing that I thought was super interesting about this is a 200-year-old technology. Sometimes it just takes a creative mind or someone in the right place to go, hey, that old technique that we used to use 200 years ago, that might help out here. And you have great results from it. And that happens all the time. Like, people don't realize, but archaeology as a whole, we borrowed 99.998% of our methodologies and the way we approach things.
Yeah.
We are the true
Uh,
bastardization of science.
and I think everyone should be glad we are no longer borrowing from the field of demolitions.
Of course, there's our
Yeah,
honorary Heinrich
yeah.
Schliemann remark.
There's the honorable mention right there. Um, but yeah, and one of the other things too with why it took 200 years for archaeologists to use this method here, in particular, is one of the other key things is the evolution of other technologies that make this more viable. We have digitization of photographs has allowed us to much more easily create the overlay that is required for the 3D photography. Imagine having to develop two separate pictures, lay them on top of each other, and then develop them a third time. That is a long, tedious method.
Which is why we've ended up where we are today. But I think that's a great point for us to wrap up for today's episode. I mean, we covered the topic at hand. We ranted for a good minute.
Yeah, yeah. It's just this is nice to see it finally be efficient.
Brought to the
Yeah,
surface.
good.
Well,
Good to see this happen. So we'll see you next time, right?
thank you guys for watching.